Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. It had been over a year since my wife began her affair with Lucas Barnes. I couldn't quite understand why I let it drag on for so long. Maybe I was just too comfortable to confront it. Once I caught wind of what was happening, I found myself strangely indifferent. I just waited, knowing that one day she'd serve me with divorce papers. I hadn't made any preparations beyond mentally accepting the inevitable. I was resigned to the idea that she'd take half of everything we had accumulated together. She could have the house and furniture. Their appraised value was less than the mortgage anyway. We had saved just enough money to cover 4 years of college for our daughter, Sandra. In 3 more years, I'd have vested rights with the company, and she'd probably want a piece of that. Penny was discreet about her affair. Thankfully, the main issue was that Barnes worked in the same company as I did, albeit in a different department and a higher pay grade. He was single and fairly attractive, but his arrogant attitude rubbed me the wrong way. Luckily, I could easily avoid him at work, except for the occasional company social affair. Things escalated quickly. Sandra had left for her first semester at Penn State, leaving Penny and me alone in the house for the first time in 18 years. Normally, it might have been a chance for a couple to reconnect sexually, but not in our case. Penny was always too tired or too busy, and I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. On a Saturday morning, Penny was in the shower while I perused the morning paper. The phone interrupted our quiet morning, but I let it go to voicemail since I wasn't expecting any calls. The message, however, caught my attention. "Hi, this is Harry Hernandez. Your watch's engraving is done. Ready for pickup anytime. Thanks. Curious. I've never worn a watch and had no intention of starting." Penny had no reason for an engraved watch either. She used her phone to check the time. Yet something nudged me to investigate. I rarely snooped through Penny's belongings, but today was different. Inside her purse, I found the receipt from the jewelry store. It detailed a Tank Heuer Carrera wristwatch with a black alligator band engraved with Forever. Penny for $3,900 paid in full. I replaced the receipt and grabbed a cold beer, mulling over the situation. It was crystal clear the watch wasn't meant for me. Penny walked into the living room just as I headed outside to mow the lawn. The grass took twice as long to trim, giving me plenty of time to contemplate. After lunch, Penny mentioned she'd be staying the night at her sister's house in Frackville. Unbeknownst to her, a big smile spread across my face. With the evening free, I finally tackled the task I'd procrastinated on for a whole year. I kicked myself for waiting until the last minute, but was relieved to have made the decision at last. She returned home around lunchtime on Sunday. We were civil, but conversation was sparse. It felt like the longest Sunday of my life. That night, I ended up sleeping on the couch. Monday morning at work started off smoothly until Lucas began flaunting his new watch to everyone. I had resigned myself to endure it, until he shot me a smirk. Until then, he'd been low-key about the affair, but now he was practically gloating. Big mistake. Without hesitation, I took a week's vacation and informed HR that I was open to a transfer to the Baltimore office. Despite declining it previously due to Penny and Sandra's reluctance to move, this time I accepted. The new position came with a promotion and a salary increase. The remainder of the day was spent at the bank and with my lawyer. I put together an offer for Penny, offering her everything, but without a limit or a share of my pending pension. All she had to do was accept per payment of Sandra's tuition, as college costs were exorbitant, leaving little in savings. When my wife wasn't home, I moved all my things into a small efficiency apartment near work. On Tuesday, I rested. The divorce papers reached Penny on Wednesday. She called me. "Thomas, do you want to explain this? Do you want to discuss anything?" she asked. "No," I replied. "Why should I sign these papers?" she asked. "Penny, it's long overdue, and you know it. Signing the papers will just make everything right. I'm the one getting the short end of the stick. You lose nothing and gain everything. You're offering no support. I gave you 20 years, and you offered nothing. If I included alimony, it would only be until you were married. Seemed to me that it would be a waste of time. As it is, everything will be over in 90 days. If you want to change things, I can guarantee that it will take over a year. I just want to move on. I understand that you're actually moving. Oh, and who told you that? I knew the answer. Does it matter? At this point, no. There was a pause in the conversation. Penny, I'm the one who got hurt here. I'm the one who's being forced to move. I did nothing wrong, and still I'm the one being punished. I've known all about Barnes for several years now. Just sign the damn papers. I'm sorry, Thomas. I never meant for this to happen. I'll get them to the lawyers tomorrow. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to lay a guilt trip on her, but I refused to give her the satisfaction. I arrived at work on Friday and tidied up my desk. It caught everyone off guard, and some voiced their disappointment at not having the chance to throw a proper goodbye party. But I wasn't in the mood for festivities. It took less than an hour to complete the out-processing. Before leaving, I phoned Sandra and did my best to explain the situation. How do you tell your daughter that you're leaving her mother without giving a solid reason? She asked once, then dropped the subject as if she already had some inkling of what was happening. I couldn't imagine how she wouldn't, considering how long things had been strained. It felt like she understood. The drive to Baltimore was filled with sadness. All I could think about was the life Penny and I had built, now crumbling so easily. I had always envisioned growing old with her. Now the concept of aging seemed irrelevant. I didn't really care. Penny never apologized or even acknowledged her actions. We skirted around the issue, both knowing what was happening but neither of us willing to confront it. It's enough to drive a person mad. I turned on the radio. Who on earth is Lady Gaga? The new job was a breeze, to say the least. I was clearly overqualified, which made my team feel at ease with my competence and confidence. It seemed like a promising move. I stayed in touch with Sandra, who shared whatever information she had about her mother. Lucas had moved in with Penny into our house just a week after I left, and Sandra wasn't thrilled about it. I couldn't blame her. Penny had agreed to all the terms of the divorce without even getting her own lawyer. Everything was proceeding smoothly according to schedule, and all I had to do now was wait. As the divorce approached its final stages, leaving only 3 weeks until it would be finalized, I decided to take a 10-day Caribbean cruise. I wasn't fond of cruises, but this one was necessary. The weekend before my departure, I caught up with some old friends from home in Atlantic City. I treated them to good wine, dining, and entertainment. It was great to reconnect with old friends. The 10 days at sea felt long. I couldn't decide what I disliked more, the food or the other guests. At times, it seemed like I was being pursued by at least 3 single women, though I wasn't entirely sure if they were single. I made the most of the ports of call to break up the monotony. When I arrived home, I was greeted by unexpected guests, Baltimore detectives, brought in at the request of the Pennsylvania State Police. They came with grave news. Lucas Barnes's body had been discovered at a roadside rest area along the Pennsylvania Turnpike. He had been brutally beaten, seemingly with a baseball bat, and succumbed to his injuries on the way to the hospital. His wallet and watch were missing, suggesting a robbery gone horribly wrong. With the revelation of Barnes' connection to Penny, I found myself thrust into the spotlight as the prime suspect. Thankfully, it took local police less than 30 minutes to confirm my alibi. I had been on a cruise for the past 10 days. The Pennsylvania State Police swiftly concluded that no further investigation into my involvement was necessary. My phone, however, bore witness to the chaos that had unfolded in my absence. Sandra, having shared my cruise plans with her mother, informed me of Penny's frantic attempts to reach me. Knowing my disdain for cruises, Penny's persistence only added to the worry. I returned Sandra's call promptly. "Sandra, I just got back from my cruise. What on earth happened?" "It's a nightmare," Sandra replied, her voice heavy with distress. "Mom's falling apart. Lucas never came home from work, and they found him on the turnpike near Downingtown, beaten to death before anyone could help him. When did this happen? Last Thursday. Well, I was in Cancun last Thursday, so it couldn't have been me. Mom insists you were involved, but there's no proof. I just had a lengthy discussion with the local police here, and they seemed satisfied with my explanation. Then why is your mom trying to contact me? She's completely lost. She's lost you, and now she's lost Lucas. She mentioned something about trying to halt the divorce. Can she do that? Not without my consent. If I'd waited a few more days, I wouldn't be dealing with this now. The following week was filled with calls from Penny and an attorney named Winstead. I ignored them all. 2 days before the divorce would be finalized, I received a certified letter requiring my signature. My secretary managed to delay its delivery, giving me a chance to leave the office. I spent the next 3 days in Atlantic City. Before heading home, I called my lawyer. He congratulated me on successfully dodging Penny's attempts to halt the divorce, and then jokingly asked for an extra $10,000 to cover expenses. After a brief awkward moment, he burst into laughter. It was a lame joke, but it did lighten the mood a bit. Instead of money, he settled for a steak dinner. It was worth it, even though I still thought the joke was lame. I never quite grasped why the police ceased their investigation of Barnes and why they never reached out to me again. Sandra called, offering congratulations, but with the cautiousness a child might feel toward their parents' separation. Penny fell into a deep depression, her sister Nicole staying with her temporarily. Suddenly, Penny realized she was facing severe financial problems. I couldn't help but smile as I hung up the phone. For the next 2 years, I had no contact with Penny. I didn't keep tabs on her or inquire about her activities. I spoke with Sandra every month, but we both tactfully avoided discussing Penny. All I knew was that she lost her house to the bank and was working in a women's clothing store at a local mall. Penny did mention to Sandra that Lucas had 2 insurance policies naming his mother as beneficiary, but it seemed Mother Barnes wasn't willing to share. I went on a few dinner dates, but without any hint of romance. Later that year, Sandra made the announcement that her wedding would take place in June. I had met her fiancé several times and was fully supportive of her choice. The wedding was planned for Harrisburg, his hometown, and naturally, Dad was covering most of the expenses. I was more than happy to assist in any way I could. Since the groom had a larger family, it made sense that they would have more guests. I agreed to give away the bride, on the condition that Sandra ensured I wouldn't have to interact with Penny in any way. She reluctantly agreed. I didn't want any drama at my daughter's wedding, but I knew that being around Penny would increase the likelihood of it. Besides getting fitted for a tuxedo, there was one more thing I had to do to prepare for the wedding. I was feeling mischievous, or should I say, my mischievous side got the better of me. The wedding day was beautiful, as they always are. Sandra kept her promise. The arrangements were made so that Penny and I could avoid each other without being too obvious. While I sat alone, Penny was accompanied by a well-dressed man who looked to be around 50. I never did find out their relationship. He could have been a colleague, a neighbor, or her new boyfriend. I didn't really care. At the reception, Penny and her companion were seated at the far left of the head table, while I was at the far right. I patiently waited for the moment to offer the father of the bride toast. As I stood up to speak, I crossed my fingers. It was a silly little prank, but I wanted it to go off as planned. I'm right-handed, but today I found myself holding the glass in my left hand. The words I spoke were inconsequential. It was my gesture that mattered. As I raised my left arm, my tuxedo sleeve slipped down, revealing a stunning Ted Heuer wristwatch with a black alligator band. I held my arm up longer than necessary, ensuring that everyone in the room could see the exquisite timepiece. A sudden gasp from the far end of the table confirmed that my mission had been successful. I extended my speech a little longer than usual, relishing the moment. When I finally sat down, I couldn't help but sport a big grin. Penny had noticed the watch, and all the planning had paid off. A few minutes later, I noticed my ex-wife and her escort leaving the room. She seemed upset, but it was hard to tell if she was crying. I lingered for another hour, playing the role of the dutiful father, before quietly slipping away to my hotel room. That night, sleep eluded me. I couldn't shake the uncertainty about Penny's reaction. If she did nothing, it would mean she had accepted her fate and moved on. But if she was still bitter, I might expect some unwelcome visitors. The answer came at 6 a.m., Mr. Thomas Harris. Two men stood at my door, dressed in dark suits. I couldn't help but picture Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black as I responded with a laugh. Yes, how can I help you? The more assertive of the two identified themselves and their purpose, representing the state attorney's office. I couldn't help but wonder who had pulled them out of bed so early. I motioned for them to take a seat as I quickly put on my pants. I had been expecting them, and I should have been dressed before they arrived. In the hotel room, with only 2 chairs available, I settled onto the unmade bed deliberately, taking more time than necessary to find comfort. "What can I help you with, gentlemen?" I asked as they entered. "You're Thomas Harris, who attended the Stuart Harris wedding yesterday?" one of them inquired. "Indeed. Sandra Harris, now Stuart, is my daughter," I confirmed. "We got a call about you wearing an expensive Tag Heuer watch during the reception," the other one stated. I reached for the oversized timepiece on the nightstand. "Yes, I was wearing this watch. Do you like it?" "That's not important, Mr. Harris. What we want to know is where you got the watch," the first one said. "Why?" I challenged. "Can you just answer the question?" the second one pressed. "No, you tell me why you want to know where I got it, and who told you I had it, and then I'll answer," I countered. "Mr. Harris, we're trying to make this easy. Could you just answer the question?" the first one insisted. "Fine, I got the watch on eBay. Now tell me why you want to know." I relented. "A watch identical to the one you're holding was found on a man killed in Downingtown 3 years ago," the second one explained. "I'm sure there are plenty of watches like this one. Can you be more specific?" I challenged further. They seemed uneasy. I sensed they were considering dragging me off to some government building to continue the conversation. "Mr. Harris, are you acquainted with a man named Lucas Barnes?" "Of course I am. I used to work with him. He's the one who had an affair with my wife, which ultimately led to our divorce." "Mr. Barnes owned a watch exactly like this one when he was killed. How do you know that?" My 2 visitors remained silent. "Was the watch found on him when he died?" Both shook their heads no simultaneously. "Do you think this could be his watch?" They were supposed to be leading this informal interrogation, but it seemed they were losing control. "Who told you this was Lucas Barnes' watch?" "Your wife, Mr. Harris. She identified it." "And how did she know it was his?" There was a moment of hesitation. "She said she bought it for him. Perhaps you should speak to her." No response. "That's it? Is that all you have?" "There's an engraving on the back of the watch that confirms her claim." "Can she prove she bought this watch?" "She has a receipt." "Damn, I have a receipt too. Let me show you." They sat in silence as I retrieved a folded paper from my wallet and handed it over. The lead guy glanced between the paper and me. "This is from eBay. It says here you bought the watch for $49. "Yeah, but I had to pay $5 for shipping." "You got a Tag Heuer watch on eBay for $49. "Not exactly. Take a closer look at the description." Both of them scrutinized the description, unaware of the wide grin on my face. "It says Tag Heuer, not Tag Heuer. Look at the watch face." The second suit examined it closely as I held it out. He turned to his partner. "It says Tag Heuer. Gentlemen, did my wife buy a Tag Heuer watch for Mr. Barnes or a Tag Heuer watch for him?" Frustration clouded their faces. Things weren't going as planned. "Can we see the back of the watch, Mr. Harris? You want to check the engraving?" "Yes, if you don't mind." "Not at all. Handing them the watch, I watched as they inspected it. I had made my point. As I put on my shirt, they stood to leave. "Sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Harris. Have a safe trip home." After they left, I shut the door and glanced at my watch. I was pleased I had opted for the extra $20 to get it engraved. Flipping it over, I chuckled at the old English script, "Eat shit and die." Sure, they could have easily checked the serial number, but where's the fun in that? Driving back to Baltimore, I knew my wife was still resentful of how I handled things. I couldn't entirely blame her, but I had hoped for some remorse on her part. It stung that she was still out to hurt me or seek revenge. After all, she was the one who cheated, not me. Maybe it was time for me to level the playing field. I tossed the Tag-Heuer watch out of the car window and reached into the glove compartment. Just by the touch, I could tell the difference. Before putting on the real deal, I read the inscription for the umpteenth time. "Forever Penny." I hated wearing watches, but maybe I could get used to this one. I'm going to make it through, just like old Blue Eyes said. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.